Members, this is going to be a procedural vote on the suspension of the rules. This requires a second. Seconded by Mr. Wilk. This is a motion to suspend the rules. This requires 40 votes in a 79-member House. This is a majority vote. This is procedural, members. The clerk will open the roll. Mr. Mays is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Holden is asking for a no vote. Mr. Holden is asking for a no vote. Mr. Mays is asking for an aye vote on the suspension of the rules. Mr. Holden is asking for a no vote on the same. Requires 40 votes. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 26, noes 49. Motion fails. Members, we are moving to SB 5 without reference to file. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 5 by Senator Leno and others, enact relating to electronic cigarettes.
Mr. Bonta, you may take the item up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. SB 5 applies existing public health protections to e-cigarettes by including these tobacco products in California's smoke-free laws, licensing laws, and the Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act. This bill is not a ban. It simply regulates e-cigarette use in the same manner as other tobacco products. 123 jurisdictions have already done so in California. It is time for us to act at the state level. E-cigarettes do not emit a, quote, harmless water vapor, end quote, but rather an aerosol that contains nicotine and ultrafine particles of toxins known to cause cancer. E-cigarettes threaten our health. The California Department of Public Health's 2015 report on e-cigarettes found that e-cigarette aerosol contains at least 10 chemicals that are on California's Proposition 65 list of chemicals known to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm. These negative health impacts become even more troubling when we consider the fact that e-cigarette use has tripled among our middle and high schoolers in the past year alone. E-cigarette marketers use child-friendly flavors such as gummy bears and bubble gum, which are attractive to young children. This bill aligns with the findings and recommendations of the Food and Drug Administration, the World Health Organization, the California Department of Public Health, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. It is supported by a long list of cities, counties, and health organizations such as the American Lung Association, the American Heart Association, the American Cancer Society, the California Medical Association, and the California Society of Addiction Medicine. If we as a legislature fail to act and do not regulate these products appropriately, we threaten to undermine California's $2 billion 25-year effort to reduce tobacco use. We cannot allow our next generations to become addicted to these new and unhealthy tobacco products. The recent amendments to this bill are purely technical, members. There has been some confusion that the double jointing language with SB 7 by Senator Hernandez, which we just heard, actually adds the smoking age to 21 language to this bill. That is not true. The only way that language will take effect is if we vote to pass SB 7, which we just did. I ask for your aye vote, members. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Gallagher, state your point of order.
Mr. Speaker, SB 5 is not properly before this body. Once again, I will point out that the purpose of this special session, there was actually 3 points: to provide at least $1.1 billion annually to stabilize the general fund's costs for Medi-Cal, to sufficiently fund to continue the 7% restoration of in-home support services hours beyond 2015 and 2016, and to sufficiently fund to provide additional rate increases for providers of Medi-Cal and the developmentally disability services. SB 5, the subject matter of this deals with e-cigarettes, none of which has anything to do with the purposes of this special session, and our procedure should be followed. Mr. Speaker, I ask for your ruling on this point of order.
Mr. Gallagher, as I've indicated previously, it's the purview of this assembly that the bill before this body is germane to the context of the topics listed in the governor's proclamation relative to health. Point of order is not well taken. We're going to move
Speaker,
forward.
I appeal the ruling of the...
Mr. Gallagher is appealing the decision of the chair. Requires a second. Seconded by Mr. Wilk. Members, this is going to be a procedural item. Mr. Gallagher, you have 2 minutes to present your rationale for appealing.
Members and Mr. Speaker and members, it was said a little bit earlier that procedure doesn't matter. I think that was one of the comments that was said before. Don't talk about procedure. Well, we need to talk about procedure. It's important. That's the whole reason we're here. We have a legislative body. We have rules that we all agreed to abide by in order to provide for a marketplace of ideas and in order to provide full input to this body who makes decisions that impacts everybody's lives. And it just bothers me every time that we do wharfs on budget, where we just throw our budget process, everything that we've done, out the window in order to wharf the latest deal to the floor. Instead of allowing daylight to shine on this, allow our constituents who elected us to have time to come to these committee meetings, to speak their ideas, to speak into this process. That's why it matters. And don't tell me that this procedure today is consistent with those rules and is consistent with the marketplace of ideas. What are you afraid of? Why can't you let this go through the natural process, legislative process? Why do you have to wharf these things to the floor? Why do you have to do amendments on the same day that nobody gets to read until we vote on it today? What's wrong with following the regular process like we have done with other measures, as was mentioned before? We did follow the right process when it came to the MCO and when it came to funding the developmentally disabled. We did follow that right process. We didn't wharf those things to the floor. We weren't wharfed. By the way, I hate that word, wharf. I mean, just by the name itself should tell you that there's something wrong here, right?
Mr. Gallagher, you have 10 seconds on the 2 minutes.
Although I did like Worf on Star Trek. He was a good guy. But Mr. Speaker and members, we laugh, and I know that we developed good relationships here.
Mr. Gallagher, time is up on the 2 minutes.
Members, I ask you, let's do this the right way, please. I know you got to follow the party line, but you don't always have to. Do the right thing. Let's do the right thing.
Mr. Gallagher, while I concur with some concern around the term wharf, members, as I've indicated, it's a purview of this House that this bill is germane to the governor's proclamation of the special session regarding health impacts. And I've previously indicated that the items before this body are germane and in the purview of this House to bring these measures before the body. With that, we have a procedural vote in front of us, members. I'm going to indicate that Mr. Holden is asking for an aye vote, that the ruling of the chair be upheld. Mr. Gallagher is asking for a no vote. This is a procedural vote, members. Clerk will open the roll. Mr. Holden is asking for an aye vote on sustaining the ruling of the chair. Mr. Gallagher is asking for a no vote. Mr. Gallagher is asking for a no vote. Mr. Holden is asking for an aye vote on sustaining the decision of this chair. The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 47, noes 25. The appeal is denied. The decision of the chair is upheld. With that, Mr. Bonta, you may continue your presentation on SB 5.
Thank you for your consideration, members. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on SB 5.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. Mr. Wagner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Understand this bill imposes a $265 Do I have the floor, Mr. Speaker? Or all right, thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Not sure what the kerfuffle is on the floor. Mr. Wagner, you may continue.
Kerfuffle notwithstanding, I will continue. The bill imposes a $265 fee on e-cigarette retailers. It is a fee that is going to go to the Department of Public Health to help with its efforts at regulation and assuring that all of the various regulations that this body heaps on people time and time again, at least in this area, are in fact obeyed. The problem I have is that the fee that we are imposing and the body to whom we are giving that fee has a whole lot of additional responsibilities, and some of that fee is going to go to those additional responsibilities. And so that raises to me a very simple question, and that is, why is this not keyed as a two-thirds bill, since it does indeed contain a tax or fee increase, and as you look at the application of it, it is not restricted to the folks that in particular are paying that additional fee, and therefore seems to me to violate the law. And so maybe question to the author, why is this not keyed as two-thirds, if you know? Why is this not a two-thirds bill? And how are you going to get around the very clear law that says it should be?
Mr. Bonta, you may choose to answer that now or in a close on the issue of two-thirds majority versus...
I'll address it in my close. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Wagner.
She's not going to answer the question. We've heard that dodge many times. I'll address it in my close, and then it doesn't actually get addressed in the close. So I would ask members to hold the author and the majority to that test. Are we going to be able to explain? Ultimately, are we going to be able to defend in court, if necessary, the fact that we are running roughshod over the law that wasn't passed by us? It was a limitation imposed by our constituents in the California state constitution. And so I am curious what the answer is to why this fee is not tagged as two-thirds. And I am very interested in the answer as to why we think we can just ignore the express will of our constituents to impose yet more rules and more regulations on California's small business. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Harper, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to express, I hope that debate isn't cut off on this bill nor any of the other bills. I'm extremely disappointed in the previous one that we did have the debate cut off on the motion from the gentleman from Whittier. Really, what are we concerned with? You know, is this getting crammed down? Is this getting steamrollered? We can't have a filibuster in this House, so you can't make that argument. Everyone's limited to 5 minutes. And it's our job to listen to every one of this member of this body, all 79, if everyone chooses to do so. For God's sakes, all of us get a full-time pay for this job. We have the ability to within the session. What is everyone trying to get out of work before noon? We should be able to actually do our job and participate in the discussion and the debate here within the floor of the state legislature. This bill is an absolute outrage. I mean, it's a war of definitions. It's a war on the English language, trying to define non-tobacco products as tobacco. Seriously, how ridiculous can you get with this bill, and how ridiculous can you get without having discussion or debate? This seems like the first time this has happened while I've been here, where on the floor we got that kind of a cutoff, and I hope it doesn't happen again, and I hope it certainly doesn't get ratified by the majority of this assembly, because I don't want this body to be accused of steamrolling this kind of legislation through.
All debate having ceased, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, you are recognized.
I just want to point out, members, the hypocrisy of this cutting off debate logic. An hour ago, the members of the opposition party voted to cut off debate by not having the special session continue at all. I rise in support.
Ms. Olson, state your point of order.
Just to clarify, we did not rise to shut down debate. We rose to argue that this process is an abuse of the process and they should go through ordinary session where we would be happy to participate in vociferous debate on the bills.
Ms. Olson, that point is well taken. Members, we are going to proceed to close this item before this body. Mr. Bonta, you may close on the item.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you for your debate and your input on this bill. Two things very quickly. One, the governor's proclamation calls out that in special session we can consider and act upon legislation necessary to, quote, improve the efficiency and efficacy of the healthcare system, reduce the cost of providing healthcare services, and improve the health of Californians. I believe this bill falls squarely within the language and the four corners of the proclamation. As to my colleague's question about what is the threshold, the appropriate threshold vote for this bill, no less an authority than Legislative Council has determined that this is a majority vote fee. We will also be hearing another majority vote bill, AB 2, by Mr. Nazarian, which changes a fee, and Legislative Council consistently deemed that bill a majority vote bill. So I think we should defer to Legislative Council on this issue. Thank you for your consideration. Colleagues, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. And with that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote.
Go.
All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 50, noes 20. Measure passes.